It's been a very informative start to the day. We're now going to break for lunch, and in 10 minutes, we'll be given a cooking demonstration by a chef who needs no introduction, but we're going to give her one anyway. Her name is Palisa Anderson. Palisa is a second-generation restaurateur of Chat Thai and a first-generation farmer of Boon Luck Farm in northern New South Wales, up in Byron Bay. In the spirit of today's theme, Palisa will be showing us how to make stir-fry prawns with glass noodles and ginger, which sounds very delicious. Enjoy lunch, and we'll see you back for part 2 of Amazing Thailand's product update.
Does anyone know about blue butterfly pea? This wondrous flower here. It's actually grown in Australia as well. We grow it on our farm. We've got an organic farm up in Byron. And it's got 500 times more anthocyanins and antioxidants than blueberries. And it's what, if you ever see blue colouring in desserts, in Thai desserts, it's often colour comes from this, the blue butterfly pea. And it's often in drinks as well. You know, whenever you go to a Thai spa, it's like the welcome drink you get. And it's pandan and blue butterfly pea. So Thais have this expression that we eat our medicine. We eat and drink our medicine. And I love this expression. It's probably my favorite expression. Wan pen lom, khom pen ya, which means sweet is air and bitter is medicine. This doesn't taste bitter. It just looks a bit like it's artificial. So we're just going to make a little bit of a tea steep. And this is rosella, actually native also to Australia. It's in the hibiscus family.
And just with these ingredients, whereabouts have you sourced these from?
So these have come from our farm up in Byron. Yeah, I got the seeds from some farmers up in Darwin. I and my mother have been kind of looking into sourcing Thai ingredients locally since basically she started her restaurant about 30 years ago. So you can start to see the colours start to transform. And this is for a drink we're going to be putting out later. And the pandan smells amazing. And the reason why we steep it rather than boil is when you're boiling, you're actually losing the nutrient content as well. All right, actually this campfire stove is actually pretty effective. It's already starting to get really hot. So while it's getting hot, I'm gonna put leaf lard. And I know the theme of the whole afternoon is about health. And when I was asked to do this, they said, oh, can you do something about clean living? Well, to me, clean living is actually where your ingredients come from. And this is from a pig that a farmer that I knew raised. This has been grass raised its whole life. And so we're just going to render the leaf lard. This is going to smoke the joint out. But actually, the most delicious Thai food stir fries start with leaf lard. Leaf lard is the kidney back fat of a well-raised pig. A lot of Thai food is middle Thai food from Bangkok is Thai Chinese. And that has its influence from, you know, the Chinese diaspora from Chinatown in Thailand. Anyone's ever been? The best food, I think, you know, of this region pretty much is exemplified in Bangkok, Chinatown. Now, can you start to smell that? So I'm just rendering that down. Can you see? Yeah, cool, okay. Now this is how you make lardons, and it's the same in pretty much every culinary culture. If you start with good saturated animal fats, it's got a very, very high burning point. So it's not going to burn for a while. However, I will just lower the gas down. Okay, it already smells good. And I have this kind of measure. If something smells good and tastes good, it's got to be good for you. Especially if it's whole food. All right. Now I chopped this down at home, so it's going to cook really fast. Oh, look at that color now. Okay.
And you were talking before about your restaurant, and it was, I believe it was inspired by your mum's love of the Tigrarian lifestyle. Do you want to talk a bit
That's
about
right. Yeah. So my mother is Thai Chinese, and her parents were pretty much migrants to Bangkok in the 1940s, so escaping the communists. And she was pretty much raised by one of the house, the ladies that looked after my grandparents' house, because both of them actually were working parents. And she was taken often to her minders, like her housekeeper's house out in the country. And back in the day, you know, the Bangkok countryside was only like, 20 minutes away from the main city of Bangkok, or the main CBD area of Bangkok. And so she kind of grew up in the very agrarian lifestyle of growing all her own, like being around people who grew the food they ate. There's another amazing Thai expression. I'm full of Thai expressions. I live my ethos by a lot of the Thai expressions my mum taught me. And the expression is "ในน้ำมีข้าว" ในน้ำมีปลา ในข้าวมีในนามีข้าว Sorry, my Thai is atrocious. And that pretty much means in the water, there's fish, there's plenty of fish. And in the fields, there's rice. And just those two things you can build a meal on, because the rest of the stuff you'll actually forage for. All right, now we're going to get the hiss of the prawns. Now we've deveined, and these are local Spencer Gulf prawns. And we cook these separately because if you cook them too long, they'll turn to mush. So we just quickly fry that off. And again, cooking in pork fat doesn't hold, like you won't actually get the prawns holding on to the fat. Gives it a nice crispness. So going by that reference of, growing the food that we eat, we grow pretty much all the food that we eat in our backyard here in Sydney. I live in the very leafy suburb of Mossman, and I've got chooks in the backyard. I replaced my front lawn. Thank you. I replaced my front lawn with about 100 fruit trees.
Wow.
All right, I'm going to turn that off. We're going to make a curry, not a curry paste. We're just going to make a paste to stir fry our things in. So we've got black peppercorns. A few cloves of garlic. I've been told this has got to go to a special table, so I've got to make sure it's good. Right, and there is some ginger. So these are the herbs that I eat mostly on a daily basis. Where's my ginger? There's my ginger.
And these are all grown at your home in Mossman?
Well, the garlic was actually from the farm, but this is from our garden here. And the ginger and the turmeric, yeah, we've got in our backyard. The coriander and the shallots came from the farm. So the Mossman garden is really for my own personal use. The farm is for the restaurant, and that's why hence we bought the farm. Because we wanted to do what we did at home on a larger scale. Our farm is certified organic. The reason why we did that was because we just found it really hard to get organic Asian greens, and also to find the things that we needed for a very authentic true Thai ingredients for the restaurant en masse. A lot of the ingredients we found were being grown by housewives out in the burbs, and that just did not kind of fulfill the quantities that we needed. Hence why, the farm.
So for those who want to attempt this dish at home, do you have any tips on where they can find these types of ingredients?
They're very common, actually. You can pretty much find them in most grocery stores. And now, nowadays, grocery stores are quite kind of diverse in the things that they stock. So all these sauces that I'm using as well, you can find in pretty much normal kind of grocery stores. Yeah. And the only thing that might be a bit harder to find would be the rosella and the blue butterfly pea. But we sell them. We've also got a grocery store. I should mention that. Let's do a little plug. Doltone Chai and Boon Cafe is a cafe inside our grocery store. Right, so I'm just going to take the skins off. The most effective way to peel garlic, actually, is to use the mortar and pestle. And if you don't have a mortar and pestle at home, I highly recommend you get one, because it's different than just chopping. When you're using the mortar and pestle, it bruises and you get the oil out of these ingredients. Whereas if you're chopping, you're actually just oxidizing the surface of the ingredients. Now, if I was at home, I'd be doing this on the floor. Do it on the floor. All right.
And you were saying before we were chatting prior to this, and you mentioned that you'd just come back from Adelaide. What were you doing in the City of Churches?
Yeah. If anyone hasn't been to Adelaide, I would highly recommend you go, because I've never been and it was my first time. I cooked Thai food there, actually. I cooked at Tasting Australia, and, kudos to them. Nowadays, like chefs like me get invited to these things. Okay, so I'm just going to turn the gas back on. And I also cooked at the Summertown Aristologist. Have you heard of that? It's a little wine bar up in the Adelaide Hills where they grow their own vegetables. And it's made me think, I think these days, if I go to do a special event anywhere, they've got to have a garden for me to pick from. It's really quite amazing to be able to kind of, they cook like this in Sydney, to be able to have the access to the ingredients. I don't know, how many of you guys care about where your food comes from? I hope a lot.
I think they're too busy eating it.
What was that?
I think they're too busy eating it at the moment.
Right, okay, so we've heated this up. Actually, might just take it down and prepare. The thing about Thai cooking is you need to have all your ingredients on hand, especially. Oh, okay, we're back on. The cooking period is very, very fast, because especially if we're doing wok cooking. Right, you asked about these ingredients before.
Yes.
So this is white Chinese celery. So this is coriander. This is white Chinese celery. Actually, while we've got this, I'll put this on to here as well. Okay, so I've got coriander roots. Don't ever discard the coriander roots.
Why is that?
Because it's all where all the flavor is. Rather than using celery, like, you've got to buy whole stalks of celery, use the coriander roots for your stock, and you'll get this almost, as big a flavor from something that little. And also, you shouldn't waste it. Okay. And in there too. So here, just to recap, there we go. There's ginger, coriander, roots, black pepper, and garlic. All right. There you go. And then, okay, so we're just going to cut these into battens. A lot here. Now, I think when I make food, I tend to put a lot less starch than I do vegetables. So there'll be lots of vegetables in this. And white celery, again, is not something that you probably will find in the grocery stores. I highly recommend people grow it. It's very easy to grow, like coriander.
Actually, just on that, what tips do you have for people who want to start growing at home?
Growing their own food?
Yeah.
It's very easy. Start with some, if you live in an apartment, if you live in an apartment, grow some in some pots. You can start by your windowsill. I would start with herbs. And then when you get the bug and that bites, like I did, you start having it on your balcony, on every free available space there is. And then eventually you graduate to a farm. That's pretty much how it worked for us. Everyone's getting rowdy. That food must be good. Okay. It's not a very big cutting board, but that's okay. We can work with it.
And so just with your farm up in Byron Bay, obviously you can't be there all the time. So do you have people helping out there?
Yeah, we've got some, we've got a mixture of Thai, Australian, Japanese farmers. They come, most of them actually come from an agrarian background. So the guy who we've got looking after our compost schedule, he's one of the course facilitators for an organic course. He comes on every week to make compost tea. All right, back on. And we've got a chef who is trying his hand at farming for the first time. It's an eclectic mix of people. They are, you know, really interested in the food system, see how it works. We practice no-till. So do you know what that means? It's minimal intervention. We don't actually till our beds. We leave them as permanent beds. We build soil. Building soil is extremely important to carbon capture, to build nutrients. Right, it's smoking. We are going to put in our little paste. You smell that? And while that is crisping up, again, the thing about cooking in pork fat is it's very hard for it to burn. Now, this is just mung bean vermicelli. We're not going to get an exciting fire, like flame, sadly, because of how low the flame is. Okay, so to season, my mother's favorite ingredient, oyster sauce. So there's approximately about 2 tablespoons there. And some fish sauce.
Everyone, if we can just keep the noise down just a little while Palisa's cooking, that would be good.
They're enjoying their food, it's good. All right, brand new bottle here. Oh, yeah. And this is a bit of Shaoxing wine, just to give it a little bit of. I wish the flames could go a bit higher, but they keep their stuff here. All right, we just kind of, so the traditional way of doing this would be then to put a little bit of stock into here, and then to pop it into a pot and let it bake slowly. But it's just as easily made here on the stove. And we'll put in a tiny bit of palm sugar actually, just to cut the saltiness. And that's the difference between Thai food and most Chinese. The Chinese element of this dish is that we're using palm sugar to bring out a little bit of the sweetness.
Palisa, I wanted to ask you as well about the similarities and the differences you see with Thai food and Australian food. And obviously we were talking before as well about Thai migration and how that's influenced everything both here and also in Thailand. So what are your thoughts on all of that?
So there is a massive Chinese diaspora in Thailand. Apparently the biggest Chinese diaspora of any country in the world actually is in Thailand. I was really surprised to learn this as well. But you know, that makes so much sense because a lot of the food is influenced by Chinese food and Chinese ingredients. But I think the Thais are really quite amazing, you know, like amazing how they put their spin on things. So even though despite, okay, the fresh herbs are going in, despite how much, you know, there is the influence of the Chinese cookery, it's, you know, there's still a huge stamp on how the food tastes in Thailand, you know, that is different from, say, Malaysian food or Singaporean food. There's a lot of crossovers in certain dishes.
And what are those, some of those crossovers, some of the
well, you know, because like say something like Part2, which is a traditional Chinese medicine soup, the Thais would again use palm sugar to flavor it, would use rather than rock sugar, and you know the addition of certain offal or the flavoring is probably a little bit stronger as well, and probably the addition of like more chili. It's, you know, Thais are always about more and more chili. All right, we're just going to taste this. Quite dark, because I think I brought the wrong soy sauce. Good though. All right. So at the restaurant, we normally garnish with these herbs, but I like my herbs to be a little bit cooked, so I'm just going to turn that off. Can you smell that? Does it smell good? See how easy that was? Good cooking is really simple cooking. Like you start off with good ingredients, can't really go wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say, how easy, you make it look very easy, but how easy is this dish actually to make for the
It's extremely easy. You saw, like it's got, as long as, and I think these are pantry staple seasonings that most people have now in their kitchens. And that's what I love about the Australian kitchen these days. You know, like everyone's got all the Asian seasonings. You've got miso in your pantry. There's no excuse to make bad food in Australia. We have access to pretty much everything. Have you ever tried grocery shopping in like, I don't know, even London? Like I lived in London 10 years ago. And just finding these things, you know, you have to go to specialty stores for. Here I find like, you don't really need to do that. You've got everything accessible within, you know, the Coles and the Woolworths. Even the big supermarkets stock all these things because of the people who live here. It's all right. To finish off, we've got the prawns.
Wow. That is looking very nice.
I'm just going to pop it. Now, and then the last final touch, the lardons from the pork crackling, the pork chitlings. Now, you know, I think people don't think about things like this as being clean living, but for me, this is the ultimate clean living because it means, one, I know where the ingredients have come from. The quality of these ingredients, you know, are from either organic farms or free range farms. The prawns are from our wild caught prawns.
All right, everyone, I think we're,
And then I'm just going to show you the drink. You're still with me. Okay, good. All right. Okay, now it's a bit of magic. Here we go. I get lime from my yard. I have to fight the bush turkeys for these. For some reason, the brush turkeys love my garden so much. That I'm just going to pop there. All right.
yeah, I think they seem to love the North Shore of Sydney as well.
Especially, yeah. I bought it at the national park. Okay, guys, watch this. This is you can do this for your children at home. A little bit of a magic trick. That's the rosella juice.
Oh, wow.
See how that changes color? Because it's got, now you can do this as a tisane because that's technically what it really is. It's a tisane. And you'll see the colors start to amalgamate. Now you can put honey with it if you so choose, and then just watch how it changes. It's the acidity turns it purple. And because rosella has natural acidity to it, you can add honey, but I quite like it just like that.
Wow. Everyone, I think we've reached
Easy, right?
the end of the cooking demonstration, but
Would you do this at home?
do
Do you reckon, Huntley, you could do this at home?
I reckon I could have a go. I don't think it'll be quite as good as that, but look, I'll give it a try.